having gone through leukemia twice, what you can share with people are looking at their businesses, need to reinventing themselves, need to watch out for their physical safety, and given the COVID situation.
What's important, I would say, as a context, was that some of the things that I learned as a result of the healing experiences were as much affirmations of ways I had approached life long before any diagnosis of illness. And why that's important is because I had worked with athletes and C-level executives before I ever was sick, and essentially teaching them the same things. And what was really potent for me is the healing experiences affirmed for me that these philosophies, these ways of being, these axiom that I was living by were on the right track. And while I may have preferred not to have such dramatic affirmations, they were potent nonetheless. And how they're relevant to right now, for instance, one of the things I always lived by was the universe always puts me exactly where I need to be. That's just something I always used to say, meaning that would force me, no matter what it felt or looked like. That belief, that philosophy always forced me to look at whatever situation I was in as an opportunity to find more of me. So even if it felt like this is horrible, but if I know that the universe puts me exactly where I need to be, then I know that my purpose is meant to be served here somehow. Just as an example, with the hospital example, I was diagnosed with leukemia. I was diagnosed at a stage of the disease where the entirety of my bone marrow had been consumed by cancer. So literally, I had no bone marrow where bone marrow is supposed to be. And I remember my sister at the time, I was about 5 days into the hospital, 5 out of 28-day stay, where my sister was like, why is this happening to you? You just started a charity. You're doing all this good work. You're working with really important people, blah, 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 blah. And really sad for me and not understanding why this was. And I reached into that belief, that knowing of mine, that if the universe puts me exactly where I need to be, why am I here? And I, without even hesitating, I said to her, because I can give this experience a voice. I've been speaking professionally. I've been traveling around the world. I've been writing books. I can create something from this experience that actually helps people. And that sense of purpose, just from that place, I brought a different version of myself, like a really purposeful version of myself to my healing. I brought my meditation into the hospital. I set up an altar. I did all of my practices right there. I brought every resource, of my conscious, my spiritual, my physical, every resources I could bring to bear on that purpose. And knowing and having a knowing in me that I would tell this story someday made a huge difference. I remember one time, 3 o'clock, I was all immunocompromised. I had no immune system. I had no healthy white blood cells in my system. So I couldn't touch anybody. I couldn't come into contact with anybody. But one night, 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm wheeling myself through the hospital corridors, masks, gloves, whole PPE outfit, my chemotherapy pole in one hand and my blood transfusion pole in the other, wheeling through the hospital. And I rounded a corner and I almost collided with one of the interns charged with my care. And she's like, Mr. Kansas, what are you doing out of your room? I said, I was going stir crazy in my room. I had to get out and get some exercise and see the parallels to what's going on now. And she says, I have to tell you, you are one of the healthiest people in this hospital. Now, mind you, I had no bone marrow. I was really in trouble. My whole body's consumed with cancer. But she could tell underneath my mask that I was smiling. And she said, why are you always so happy? And I said,
not why, but how.
Yeah, right. How, right?
Yeah.
I said, this is going to make a great speech someday. And she was just blown away. That was my perspective. And that was authentic. Like I really was. CK, did you ever read the book by Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning?
Yeah.
Beautiful book.
Yeah.
And I remember hearing a mentor of mine, just a beautiful human being, Zig Ziglar, told the story of how Viktor Frankl, when he was giving a graduation speech, said to the graduates, "You and I have never met, but I've stood before you and delivered this speech 10,000 times."
Mm.
And Viktor Frankl reflected later on that vision of him sharing this wisdom while he was in the concentration camps of Auschwitz, Nazi Germany. He said that the vision of him teaching what he was learning from that experience kept him alive. That was his
Mm.
purpose. And I
Mm.
remember that so vividly. And I remember remembering that in the
Mm.
hospital and
Mm.
thinking, why else would this be happening to me? Of the people whose ear I have, the leaders who I coach, and the thought leaders and the conversation leaders that I influence, that's why this is happening to me.
Mm.